The following is a special presentation.
Hi there, Bill Hitchcock. Welcome to this special presentation. I just got done doing a Zoom interview with Jesse Bissette for the North Carolina Marine Fisheries Commission, and we spoke for almost a half hour exclusively about the new state law coming up December 1st, where recreational fishermen are going to have to report their catches of speckled trout, gray trout, striped bass, red drum, and flounder, and commercial fishermen are going to have to report all of their catches, whether they sell it or not. Now, this was intended just to be like a 2 to 3 minute news piece type interview. It wound up being a half hour. Lots of great information. Let's take a listen. All right, Jesse, December 1st, you and I did a show on this about 7-8 months ago, but December 1st, a new state law comes into being where recreational fishermen are going to have to report gray trout, speckled trout, flounder, red drum, and striped bass to the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries, and also commercial fishermen starting December 1st, regardless of sale or what have you, they're going to have to report catch for personal consumption, and it doesn't matter what the fish is. How did this all come about?
So that's a great question, Bill. Back in 2023, there was a law passed by the North Carolina General Assembly. It's specifically Session Law 2023-137. And Section 6 of that law, I can't remember the exact title of that section off the top of my head. It's something along the lines of the phased-in reporting of certain fish harvests. That law requires recreational fishermen who harvest red drum, spotted sea trout, or speckled trout, most people know them as, striped bass, gray trout or weak fish, and flounder. They have to report that harvest to the Division of Marine Fisheries, and that applies if you're fishing in coastal waters, in joint waters, or in inland waters adjacent to coastal or joint waters, which is a little confusing sounding, but basically what that means, if you harvest any of those 5 species up to the first impoundments in any of our coastal river systems, you have to report that to the Division of Marine Fisheries. And also a part of that legislation of that session law is the commercial component that you spoke of. For the commercial fishermen, if you're involved in a commercial fishing operation and you harvest, the legislation says any fish, but in this context, any fish means any finfish, any crustaceans, any shellfish, basically anything at all. Commercial fishermen will have to report that through the division or to the division. And for the commercial sector, the way they'll report is through the North Carolina trip ticket program that we currently have in place. If you harvest fish and you plan on selling them, right now, even before December 1st, you're required to sell them through a licensed seafood dealer. Starting December 1st of this year, if you catch any fish and are part of a commercial fishing operation, and if you don't sell any of those fish, say if you keep them for personal consumption or donate them or some other use, you'll also have to put those fish through the North Carolina trip ticket system. You'll have to get a trip ticket for them.
Let me ask you this, back to my first question. Why did this, and I'm thinking more on the recreational side right now, why did this come about? What was the purpose of this to be instituted?
So the Division of Marine Fisheries is not the entity that actually requested this legislation. It was a couple of outside stakeholder groups that kind of got together and talked to the General Assembly about this requirement or about getting this requirement put into effect. So I don't want to.
Do you know who those stakeholder groups are?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's the North Carolina Fisheries Association and the North Carolina Marine and Estuary Foundation.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for them. I think both of them
no.
have publicly released like blog posts and stuff, kind of with their stance on mandatory harvest reporting. But I've talked to some folks from those groups, and I think the idea is ultimately if we can get better data, if we can get more accurate, more timely harvest information, that should, in theory anyway, lead to better management and better management is what we all want. We all want the ability. We want more access. We want the ability to go out and harvest fish that we would like to keep for ourselves, and we want to make sure that our resources stay healthy. And
Well,
the best
is
way to
that
do that is better data.
is that to allude that the present methodology of surveying is not adequate or accurate or sufficient?
So I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I think there is. So the way we currently collect recreational data in North Carolina and really on the East Coast entirely is what we call the Marine Recreational Information Program. It's a two-part survey. It's a federal survey that's contracted out through the state in North Carolina. And we send DMF staff out to boat ramps, to the pier, to the beaches, basically everywhere the public can access the water. And those samplers survey fishermen about what they harvest. So at the end of a fishing trip, you might have, if you're a fisherman, say you're fishing from a boat, you get back to the boat ramp, you might have a DMF staff member walk up to you and ask you about your fishing trip. If you kept anything, he'll ask to measure and weigh it. That information from what we call the dockside survey is combined with another survey that MRIP does, which is our mail survey, where we send out a mail survey to a subset of licensed anglers and basically get effort information from them, how often they
Right.
fish. And those two
Right.
surveys are combined to come up with a harvest estimate. For a lot of species, we have a high amount of confidence in our estimates and our MRIP estimates for those. But there are some species that just MRIP doesn't capture very well, and those species are we call them rare event species. They're ones that maybe have a short window that people catch
Right.
them in, or they're not very heavily targeted. It's just our intercept, our anglers that go to the dock, do the dockside surveys. They just don't intercept people that interact with those fish very often. It's really interesting with the mandatory harvest reporting requirements. The five species that were selected for those are some of the most popular recreational fisheries in North Carolina. So for spotted sea trout, for example, the level of confidence that we have in our spotted sea trout recreational data is relatively high. It's one of our, at least I believe it's one of our more, uh, it's one of our better species that we collect with MRIT. Um, for something like flounder used to be in that same boat. It was something that we saw very often. But now that we have the kind of the compressed window of a flounder season, uh, it's a little bit harder because there's only like this past year there was only a 2 week flounder season. The chances of one of our field samplers interacting with somebody that harvested flounder is a lot lower. So ultimately, that could lead to imprecise landing estimates. Now, we were able, thankfully.
Jesse, let me ask you this because this has been going around. It's one of the little picky detail things that we fishermen come up with. Is there a difference between catch and harvest? I've heard people ask about that. And what about catch and release? Or is a release fish just going unaccounted, particularly if you're trying to survey the amount of fish that are in the water via the fisherman? So if you release a fish, it's not being counted, or is it?
So with mandatory harvest reporting, the only thing that we're asking the public to report through the mandatory harvest reporting program is the harvested fish that you caught and you kept. But just as you alluded to, released fish, what you catch and threw back, that's a really important thing for fisheries managers to know as well. Like the potential for catch and release to impact our stocks is really high. So mandatory harvest reporting doesn't collect that information, but the surveys that we currently do, the Marine Recreational Information Program survey, it does collect release information. And that's really why the division is trying to stress to the public that even with this mandatory harvest reporting program, we really need anglers' cooperation with our dockside surveyors. That information is still vital to managers making management decisions. The mandatory harvest reporting program, it won't collect any information about discards. It won't collect any information about what you were actually targeting. It doesn't collect any information about trips where you didn't harvest anything. There's a lot of information that's valuable to our fisheries managers that mandatory harvest reporting won't collect. So we really need people to still cooperate with our dockside surveyors.
What is real briefly, the methodology that we as recreational fishermen are going to report our catch? The commercial fishermen go through the trip ticket program, whether they're selling or not. What about me as a recreational fisherman? How am I going to get the information to you?
So we've developed a couple of different ways to do that, and we're kind of looking at mandatory harvest reporting as a two-phased approach because there are specific timelines in the legislation for mandatory harvest reporting. We weren't able to build a fully functional, standalone, kind of robust reporting application. So in this first phase, anglers will report using an online web form. It's not really important to know the granular details of it, but it's a Survey 123 form that you can access with your smartphone, with a tablet, with a computer, basically anything the public can use to access the internet, they can use to report. For anglers who don't have a smartphone or some electronic means of reporting, we've developed a paper report card that you can download off the Division of Marine Fisheries website, or starting December 1st, you'll be able to pick them up from Division of Marine Fisheries offices. You'll take that paper report card with you when you're fishing, and at the end of your trip, fill that paper report card out, and then you'll have until midnight the following day to get to a computer or some other source to access the internet and submit that electronically.
Let me ask you this. Are there any exemptions to this new law, such as a subsistence fisherman, a recreational fisherman that's, he doesn't make very much money and he needs to keep fish that he catches? Are there any exclusion or exemptions to this new law coming up December 1st?
No, sir, there are no exemptions. If you're a fisherman who has the subsistence waiver, you're still required to report the harvest of these 5 species of fish. There is on the actual reporting web form, there's a question that if you're basically if you're reporting for yourself or if you're reporting for minor children that were fishing with you. And for that, if you say you're fishing out in a boat and you have your 2 children with you and one of them's 10 and one of them's 12, in that scenario, you as the adult on the trip can select that you're reporting for yourself and for minor children. Then you enter in the number of minor children that you're reporting for, and you can fill out a harvest report that way. In all other scenarios, the onus of reporting is on the actual individual angler. And if you harvest any of those 5 species, you have to report them.
What is the penalty? If I don't report and the man catches me, what's the penalty?
So the penalty is actually laid out specifically in the legislation itself. It's laid out in 3 different phases. The first phase, starting December 1st, 2025, the only penalty that there is if you're found not to have reported the harvest of those 5 species is a verbal warning from Marine Patrol. Basically, Marine Patrol will stop you, say, hey, you were supposed to report that red drum. This is how you would do it. It's kind of the education phase. Starting December 1st, 2026, we move into the written warning phase, which is still sort of the education phase. There's no official penalty associated with it. Marine Patrol will stop you, say, hey, you were supposed to report that red drum. Here's a written warning saying you didn't report, but there's no fine or anything starting December 1st, 2026. Starting December 1st, 2027 is when the actual penalty phase kicks in. So if you're found not to have reported after December 1st, 2027, you'll be subject to an infraction with a $35 fine, which that doesn't sound like a whole lot. $35. We've heard from people like, oh, that's not a really big disincentive. I'll just do that and get the fine. But it's important to note that the fine does include court costs, which I think are around $180 right now. So ultimately, that infraction would end up costing you a little over $200. And if you're someone who's found to be a repeat violator, those infractions can count towards the revocation of your fishing license or the suspension of your fishing license.
And that's up to the director, is it not?
Yes, sir.
All right. What about this? If everybody's going to have a license and everybody's going to have to report these fish, it sounds to me that we're going to have to get more Marine Patrol officers out there. Is that anticipated?
So I'll answer that question real fast, but there is one thing that I want to clarify in that question.
Sure.
So not everybody will be required to, or not everybody is required to have a fishing license in North Carolina if you're fishing coastal or joint waters. If you're fishing from, say, a charter boat that has a for-hire blanket license on it, you're not required to have a fishing license. If you're fishing from ocean fishing pier that has that blanket license, you're not required to have a license.
But
Same
as a
thing for
point of clarification, even if you are on a charter boat or on a pier where they both have blanket licenses, if you catch those fish have to be still reported.
yes, sir. That's exactly right.
Okay.
And as far as your question about Marine Patrol, enforcement of this is going to be a real challenge. There's 1.5 million, or at least somewhere around 1.5 million anglers that fish our coastal waters in North Carolina. And for the 5 species that we're talking about, they're, like I said before, they're some of the most popular fisheries that we have in North Carolina recreationally. And it's somewhere around 600 to 800,000 trips that interact with those 5 species every year, and enforcement of that is going to be a real challenge. There's currently, I think we actually just got 2 new law enforcement positions in Marine Patrol, so we're up to 58, I believe. But a handful of those are primarily desk officers, primarily people that don't go out into the field. So we have roughly 50 officers that patrol the thousands of miles of coastline that we have, and thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of coastal waters. And we've kind of, I don't know if I should call it a standing request, but one of the requests that the division has had long term from the legislature is a request for more enforcement. We have heard from the public, we've seen ourselves that there is a need for more enforcement. And that's not to say that the best way to ensure compliance is just strong arming people into doing it. We really would like to be able to get the word out there and have people understand that in order to ensure that we have better fisheries, we need better, more reliable, quicker data. And in order to get that data, it's going to take the cooperation of both recreational and commercial fishermen. So,
By the way, I got to interject off that last show that you and I did several months back. A viewer posted at YouTube what I thought was a great idea. I don't know if this has been talked about. He made mention that for all the entries, everybody that reports, put it in a raffle and draw, say, maybe once a month for a fabulous prize and get business involved. So maybe that way, well, that's one of the ways people could be rewarded outside of just finding out some or just getting some good data.
yeah, we've talked about doing some sort of a raffle or incentive program for reporting, and it's not something that we've ruled out yet. One of the concerns with an incentive-based reporting program is the potential to introduce bias into the program, and that's something we really don't want to do. Every time we talk about a raffle with someone, I think a friend of mine who's a very smart. And I say this lovingly, computer nerd who is one of the people that just likes to test what he can do and what he can get away with. And every time we talk about a raffle where every single time you report, you get entered, you get an entry into that raffle. I think of someone like him building some system, some script that
Right.
automatically enters in a report just so he gets more entries into the raffle. So there are some concerns with the raffle system, but it is something that we're still continuing to explore at the division, because I think it could be something that kind of made reporting a little bit more fun.
By the way, in talking about introducing bias, I have heard and people have posted and emailed me about introducing their own bias by saying they've caught the maximum of each fish of all 5 fish every time they go on out. So obviously, no system is pure, but we're hoping, fingers crossed, that this system of actual reporting will be more accurate than just surveying. I'm going to spitball some things out to you real quickly because we're running out of time. Is any idea about the participation rate? Are you anticipating a participation rate? Is there any number of like, man, we're hoping at least 25%, 50%, 100% of the folks will report?
We really don't have any good idea of how many people will report right from the beginning, starting December 1st. I think part of the reason again, I can't speak for the legislature, but I think part of the reason they have this phased-in approach is because this is a big change to the way recreational fishing data collection in North Carolina operates, and it's it's a big requirement from the public to have to report these five species. And again, we have over a million and a half anglers in North Carolina, and we've done what we can to get the word out to them. I'm actually up in Greensboro. I was at a fishing club last night talking about mandatory harvest reporting, but reaching all of those million and a half anglers and letting them know about this requirement is a continual challenge for the division. We try to get the word out. We try to inform everybody, but that's a lot of people coming from a lot of different areas. And I I have all ideas that the compliance rate this first year will be different than the compliance rate in the second year and the third year. I hope to see it gradually increase, and hopefully we should kind of level out into a compliance rate that is relatively high and good enough so that we can get some real useful information from.
Is any other state doing this?
So there's not any other state on the East Coast that I'm aware of that's doing anything to this scale for these five species. There is some reporting programs for other species that are a little bit smaller in scale in other areas of the country. I'm thinking steelhead in California, and I think there might be some sturgeon reporting stuff out west as well. But
So we're
don't.
trailblazing. We're trailblazing here.
Yes, sir. Yeah, this is a novel approach to recreational data collection, and I'm excited about the possibilities, but there is still some hesitation about what we're going to see from it. It's entirely people ask a lot, like, well, what's this data going to be like? Is this data going to be usable? Is it going to be good for anything? Is it going to help? And the answer to that is it's really up to the fishing public. If we see people are actually complying like they're supposed to, they're reporting accurately, honestly, and this data is meaningful and I could see it being useful, not in the near term, because there still will have to be a calibration with the MRIT and the current methods of recreational data collection. But if people report accurately and honestly, I could see this being useful in the future. But on the flip side of that, if people don't, then it won't be useful at all.
All right, I gotta jump in here. And again, we're running out of time. You said in calibration with MREP. So are we not going to get the raw data from the actual reporting, or is it going to be melded in with the surveying, and that's the information we're going to get?
So it won't be melded in with the survey, and the information that we'll get from mandatory harvest reporting will be a standalone information. And we'll still get the MRIP number. MRIP's still currently the only scientifically accredited, validated survey for recreational statistics on the East Coast. So that number is MRIP will still be the official number that we use for management decisions. But hopefully, mandatory harvest reporting can help inform some of that decision making.
One last question: are there aspirations to increasing the reporting, increasing the fish that get reported in the future? And obviously, depending on how this works, if this is a bus program, then you're not going to expand it, I hope. But if it's successful, are we talking about let's include Spanish mackerel, king mackerel, let's include whatever fish? Is that possible?
So I wouldn't rule it out entirely, but again, since this wasn't a program that the Division of Marine Fisheries initiated ourselves, we currently haven't been in discussions of adding any species or anything like that. As we kind of talked about before, one of the things that is very needed for fisheries managers making decisions is that discard information, the target information. If mandatory reporting does prove to be successful, I could see some of that data being added to the program to try to collect as well. But again, as you said, that's entirely dependent upon whether or not this people report and this is successful.
We've been talking with Jesse Bissette with the North Carolina Marine Fisheries Commission. Jesse, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. I have one thing to add, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so we did a post yesterday with a video kind of announcing recreational reporting to the public, and we got a lot of comments. I think I checked this morning, that video had 30,000 views on it. And one of the comments that I saw repeated throughout was, oh, does this mean starting December 1st, I'm going to be allowed to harvest flounder and striped bass, or the fish that are currently closed? And I do want to reiterate to people that the reporting requirement is in effect when you harvest that species during the open season. Just because we're saying you have to report the harvest of flounder starting December 1st doesn't mean that we're open in flounder season December 1st. But with that said, if you're someone who happens to illegally harvest a flounder and you would like to report it, we would like for you to report it because that's still data that would be useful for us. We still need that information to make management decisions. We're not using this for enforcement purposes. If you report that you harvest a flounder, Marine Patrol is not going to track you down and say like, hey, you harvested that flounder out of season. What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't think the likelihood of that's very high, but we'll find out. All
Yeah, I
right,
don't think so
Jesse,
either.
thanks a lot for being with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Have a good one.
I'd like to thank Jesse Bissette with the North Carolina Marine Fisheries Commission for taking the time out to do this interview with me on Zoom. He was actually up in Greensboro and had just spoken with the Greensboro Fishing Club the night before about this upcoming law, December 1st. It's going to be interesting when it does come into being. Let's see what happens. I'm Bill Hitchcock. Until next time, see ya.